I used to tell myself I was lucky. Liam was the kind of man everyone adored, effortlessly charming, always knowing the right thing to say. But there was always this small whisper in the back of my mind, asking if it was all real. He was friendly, sure, but sometimes it felt like he was too friendly. The lingering smiles, the playful touches that lasted just a second too long. I noticed. I always noticed. And every time that whisper got louder, he'd somehow sense it. He'd pull me close, kiss my forehead, and tell me I was overthinking. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him so badly. But you know that feeling when something's just off and you can't quite put your finger on it? That was me, night after night, questioning if I was paranoid or perceptive. Then came the accident, my father, slipping on the icy steps outside his house. The call came in the middle of dinner. Liam was supportive, told me to go, take care of him, do whatever I needed. He kissed me goodbye like a perfect husband, but as I packed my bags, that whisper turned into a scream. I couldn't leave without knowing. So, before I locked the door behind me, I did something I never thought I would. I installed hidden cameras, in the living room, the hallway, even the kitchen. I told myself it was just to ease my mind. But if I'm being honest, I already knew. The drive to my father's house was long, but my thoughts were louder than the engine. I kept replaying moments in my head. The late nights Liam stayed out, the sudden phone calls he'd dismiss with a smile, the cologne on his shirt that wasn't his. I told myself I was being ridiculous, but deep down I could feel it tightening in my chest, that cold, heavy weight of truth. I wasn't imagining things. When I got to my father's, the weight of his accident distracted me, at first. Seeing him bruised, weak, fighting through pain, it broke my heart. But once he was settled, once the nights got quiet, my mind wandered right back to Liam. I found myself staring at my phone, hesitating. Should I check the cameras? Was I ready to see what I already suspected? The first night I didn't have the courage. I told myself it could wait. But by the second night I couldn't resist. My hands trembled as I opened the app, my heart racing like it was about to jump out of my chest. Nothing, just an empty living room and the soft hum of silence. I exhaled, half relieved, half foolish. Maybe I really was overthinking. But then, the next night, something shifted. He didn't know I was watching, and as I stared at that small screen, my stomach twisted. A woman I recognized walked through my front door, laughing. I watched Liam greet her like he'd greeted me 100 times. Warm, familiar, too intimate. My heart cracked, but I didn't look away. I sat there, frozen, watching as they poured wine, the same bottle he and I used to share on Friday nights. She sat in my chair. She laughed at his jokes, and then, without hesitation, he kissed her like he'd kissed me for years. I couldn't breathe. My face was hot, my hands ice cold. I felt like I was watching my life unravel on a tiny glowing screen, and I couldn't stop it. I wanted to scream, throw the phone across the room, call him and demand answers. But I didn't. I just sat there in silence, swallowing the pain, feeling every second of betrayal sink deeper. And then, almost automatically, I hit the record button. I didn't even think about it. Something inside me shifted, from heartbreak to calculation. If this was the truth, I was going to capture every second of it. The next few nights were worse. Different women, some I'd met before, smiling at me, complimenting my cooking. Others were strangers. Each time, it felt like another knife twisting inside me. But instead of breaking down, I started saving everything, every video, every timestamp. I didn't cry. I couldn't. I just collected proof, like armor, piece by piece. And through it all, he had no idea. He called me every night, told me he missed me, asked how my father was doing. His voice sounded so sincere. I played along, but inside, I was already planning. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't just betrayal. It was war. And I wasn't going to lose. Every night became a ritual. I'd sit on the edge of the guest bed, phone in hand, heart pounding, and watch. Some nights, I'd hope. Maybe tonight he'd be alone. Maybe I was wrong. But hope faded fast. The doorbell would ring, and in she'd walk. Sometimes young and giggling, sometimes older, more confident, like she belonged there. And Liam, he welcomed them all with that same easy smile that used to make me feel special. I recorded everything. At first, it felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life fall apart. But it was mine. My home, my husband, my trust shattered in real time. The worst part wasn't even the betrayal. It was how easy he made it look. No guilt, no hesitation. He was living a double life so comfortably, it made me wonder how long this had been going on. I started noticing patterns. Wednesdays around 7, a woman in red. Fridays, wine and candles. Sundays, like clockwork, someone new. Each visit chipped away at the illusion I had clung to for so long. And still, every night, Liam would text me. "Miss you, babe. How's your dad?" I'd reply with kindness, forcing my fingers to type loving words, all while recording his lies. By the end of the second week, I wasn't even surprised anymore. The shock had worn off. Now there was only cold focus. I wasn't going to confront him, not yet. I was going to build my case, brick by brick, until there was nowhere for him to hide. I knew exactly what I had to do. I started saving everything to a private drive, videos, screenshots, notes with dates and times. It became an obsession, but one I couldn't let go of. Each file felt like a piece of my sanity, proof that I wasn't crazy. I thought about all the times he'd gaslighted me, gently convincing me I was imagining things. Now I had hours of evidence that I wasn't imagining anything. I was finally seeing him for who he really was. Some nights I cried quietly after hitting record, wiping tears on the sleeve of my sweater while my father slept down the hall. But mostly, I felt hollow. Like the part of me that used to love him had already started shutting down. There was still pain, yes, sharp and raw, but underneath it, something stronger was growing. Resolve. I reached out to a lawyer. I didn't even hesitate. The moment I explained the situation, she was direct and calm. "You're doing the right thing," she told me. "Save everything. We'll protect what's yours." Hearing those words, I felt something loosen in my chest. I wasn't powerless. I wasn't trapped. I could fight back. And I would. Liam kept spending money like nothing was wrong. Lavish dinners, weekend getaways I never knew about, all charged to our accounts. Every transaction felt like fuel for the fire. He thought I was far away and clueless, but I was watching, recording, planning. Every careless move he made was another step toward his own downfall. The more evidence I gathered, the calmer I became. Strange, isn't it? You'd think I'd be falling apart, but instead, I felt a quiet clarity settling in. I spent hours reviewing footage, documenting everything with the precision of someone assembling a puzzle. Each piece fit perfectly into the story I no longer needed him to tell me. I already knew how it ended. I just had to decide how I wanted to write the final chapter. My lawyer and I started planning. She walked me through steps I never thought I'd take. Freezing joint accounts, shifting property titles, safeguarding my financial future before Liam could even sense the storm brewing. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming control, about making sure that after all his lies, I wouldn't be left picking up the pieces. And while I stayed by my father's side, helping him heal, I felt myself healing in a way too. The weight of doubt that had lived in my chest for so long was finally lifting. It wasn't me. It had never been me. He made those choices. He built those lies. And now, he was going to face the truth. Not just quietly, not behind closed doors, but in a way he'd never forget. Every night before bed, I'd sit quietly and whisper to myself, "Just a little longer." I could almost see it. The moment I'd come home, smile politely, and watch the color drain from his face. I didn't know exactly how it would play out yet, but I was going to make sure he felt every ounce of what he'd put me through. By the third week, I was no longer reacting. I was strategizing. My lawyer guided me through every step, and I followed her advice to the letter. We froze joint accounts so quietly that Liam didn't notice a thing. I transferred property titles into my name, all legal, all by the book. Every paper signed felt like another lock clicking shut on the trap I was setting. And he kept spending, kept lying, oblivious to the ground shifting beneath his feet. I watched him from afar, like someone observing a stranger. I saw his patterns, his arrogance, the way he carried on as if actions had no consequences. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was entitlement. That made it easier to harden my heart. Every careless move he made was another rope tightening around him, and I didn't feel guilty. Not even a little. He deserved whatever was coming. Back at my father's house, things began to brighten. His color returned, his smile came back. Slower, but stronger. Sitting beside him, I realized I hadn't smiled genuinely in weeks. He would squeeze my hand and say, "You're stronger than you think, sweetheart." I clung to those words. They reminded me who I was before Liam's lies began to wear me down. I wasn't weak. I wasn't small. I was ready. I knew I couldn't stay away much longer. My father was healing. My plan was nearly complete. And the moment of truth? It was approaching fast. I could almost feel it crackling in the air around me. There was just one more step, one final piece to set in place before I went home and watched his world collapse. The night before I left, I sat in silence, staring out the window while my father slept peacefully in the next room. The weight of everything pressed down on me, but instead of breaking, I felt steady, focused. I thought back to all the nights Liam had lied straight to my face, all the times I'd doubted myself because of his sweet words and soft touches. That was over. I wasn't that woman anymore. I was walking into this with my eyes wide open. I double-checked every document, every transfer, every legal file. My lawyer called late that night, her voice calm and reassuring. "It's all set," she said. "You're protected." I thanked her, feeling a strange sense of power settle in my chest. It wasn't joy, not exactly. It was something quieter, deeper, a quiet strength I didn't know I still had. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity. Early the next morning, I kissed my father goodbye, promising to return soon. He looked at me for a long moment, as if he could see the battle I was about to fight but knew better than to ask. Just one small squeeze of my hand. That's all I needed. I left his house with my suitcase and my heart steady. There was nothing left to fear. The drive home felt surreal. Every mile brought me closer to the moment I'd imagined over and over. I rehearsed my words, but I knew I wouldn't need them. The truth would speak loud enough on its own. I could feel the tension building, but I didn't turn away from it. I welcomed it. Because when I walked through that front door, everything was going to change. For good. I pulled into the driveway and sat there for a moment, just breathing. The house looked the same, calm, quiet, perfectly ordinary, but I knew what waited inside. I opened the door slowly, stepping into the life I used to know, now feeling like a visitor. The air smelled faintly of his cologne and something else, perfume that wasn't mine. It didn't hurt anymore. It just confirmed I was right to prepare. Liam greeted me like nothing had happened. Arms wide, smile easy, a kiss on the cheek. "You're back. How's your dad?" I answered softly, steady and polite, like I hadn't spent weeks watching his double life unfold. Inside, my pulse stayed steady. No anger, no tears. Just focus. He chatted casually, pouring me a glass of wine, the same bottle he'd shared with them. I took it in my hand, but didn't sip. I just smiled. Over the next couple of hours, I let him talk. He told me stories, asked about my father, played the devoted husband so well I almost admired his performance. But I wasn't playing anymore. I listened with the patience of someone who already knew the ending. My heart didn't race. My palms didn't sweat. I was ready. Every word he spoke was just another stone laid on the path to his downfall. That night, as we sat on the couch, I glanced at him and felt nothing but calm anticipation. I looked at the television, imagining how it would feel to press play. Not yet, but soon. Very soon. I smiled at him one last time, letting him believe, just for a little while longer, that he was safe. The next morning, everything felt unnaturally quiet. Liam made coffee, humming softly in the kitchen, while I sat at the dining table, phone in hand. My heart didn't race. Instead, there was a strange stillness inside me, like standing at the edge of a cliff. Not afraid, just ready. He brought me a cup, kissed the top of my head. I looked up at him, and for the first time, really saw him for who he was. A stranger in familiar skin. I waited until after dinner. He was relaxed, scrolling through his phone, completely unaware. I cleared my throat gently. "Liam," I said softly, and he looked up with that same easy smile. "Can you sit down for a minute?" He did, without question. I picked up my phone, walked to the TV, and connected it with a single tap. My hands didn't shake. I pressed play. The first video began. At first, he looked confused. He glanced at me, then back at the screen where he appeared, laughing, pouring wine, kissing another woman in our home. His brow furrowed. The second video started. His face paled. The third, the fourth. He stopped breathing normally. His hands trembled. "Amira, I can explain." But I didn't respond. I just sat there watching him squirm, the weight of his own actions finally crushing down on him. He broke down fast. Tears spilled. His voice cracked. He crawled toward me, grabbing my hands, sobbing like a child caught in a lie. Please, I made mistakes. It didn't mean anything. Don't do this." But I just looked at him, cold and steady. Years of doubt, humiliation, and silence boiled down to this moment. And I wasn't going to flinch. Not now. He clung to my legs, tears soaking into the fabric of my jeans. "I love you, Amira. You have to believe me. It was just weakness. Stupid mistakes." His voice cracked on every word. But I didn't move. I looked down at him, this man who had once been my world, now reduced to a sobbing mess at my feet. I felt nothing. No pity, no sadness. Just a cool detachment, like watching someone reap exactly what they'd sown. I stood slowly, his hands slipping from my ankles, and walked to the front door. I opened it wide. The night air was cold, crisp, and quiet. The kind of silence that feels final. I turned back to him, my voice steady, clear. "I gave you loyalty," I said softly, "and you gave me humiliation. Now it's your turn." His face crumpled. "No, please. Not like this. Don't do this to me." But I was already gathering his clothes. One by one, I tossed them out onto the porch. His favorite jacket, his work shoes, the watch I'd given him for our anniversary. Each piece landed with a soft thud that echoed louder than any scream could. He tried to grab my hands, tried to stop me, but I didn't slow down. Shirts, pants, socks, all of it, out the door. The neighbors' curtains twitched, silhouettes gathering in windows. Good. Let them see. By the time I threw out the last piece, he was kneeling in the doorway, begging in whispers that broke into sobs. I looked down at him, not with hatred, not even with anger, but with complete, perfect indifference. And then I shut the door in his face. The lock clicked into place, firm and final. For the first time in years, I felt weightless. On the other side of the door, I could still hear him, his fists tapping, then pounding, his voice breaking apart into desperate fragments. "Please, Amira, don't do this. I'll change. I swear, I'll change." But his promises meant nothing now. The man who once controlled every conversation with charm and cleverness was now stripped bare. All that was left was panic, regret, and the cold night air biting at his skin. I leaned against the door for a moment, breathing in the silence that followed each plea. My heart didn't flutter. My hands didn't tremble. The power he once held over me had vanished, not with a fight, but with clarity. Out the window, I saw porch lights flicker on across the street. Neighbors gathering, watching, whispering. Let them. He had performed for an audience his entire life. Tonight, they could finally see the truth. I walked to the living room, the same space where so many lies had been told. I poured myself a glass of wine, from the very bottle he used to share with them, and sat down. His cries continued for a while, but they grew softer, more broken. Eventually, they stopped. I imagined him sitting out there in the cold, surrounded by his belongings, with nowhere left to go and no one left to fool. I didn't feel triumphant. It wasn't revenge that warmed me. It was release. I'd carried the weight of his deceit for so long that I had forgotten what freedom felt like. But now, in this quiet room, I felt it. Light, steady, certain. And in that certainty, I knew this wasn't the end of the story. There was still more to come. The next morning, I opened the door to bright sunlight and silence. His things were still there, strewn across the porch like remnants of a life that didn't belong to me anymore. But Liam was gone. No more begging, no more hollow promises. Just his scent lingering faintly in the air, already fading. I stepped over his clothes, locked the door again, and for the first time in years, felt like I was standing in my home. Word spread quickly. It always does. The whispers turned into conversations, and by midday, the mask he had worn so well was shattered in front of everyone. I didn't have to say a word. His humiliation became public property, the same way he had turned our marriage into a spectacle behind closed doors. Friends who once adored him stopped calling. The women he entertained vanished. Nobody wants to cling to a sinking ship. He tried, of course. Small texts at first. Can we talk? Followed by long, rambling voicemails that I never listened to all the way through. Each one was filled with excuses, regret, empty promises dressed up in desperation. But I was beyond all that. The Amira who would have crumbled at those words was gone. I had buried her the moment I locked that door. I focused on what mattered. My father, still healing, stronger each day. Our afternoons became simple and sweet. Cups of tea, quiet talks, gentle laughter. I found joy in small things again. Fresh air on my skin. Silence that wasn't heavy. Coffee that tasted like freedom. Every moment reminded me that life could be soft, even after it had been so sharp for so long. Weeks passed, and with each day, Liam's absence became just another part of the background noise. Faint, irrelevant, distant. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he had moved into a small apartment, nothing like the house we shared. His social circle evaporated. The people who once laughed at his jokes didn't return his calls. There's something almost poetic about how fast charm dissolves when truth surfaces. I never replied to his messages, not once. He tried to claw his way back into my life with apologies and nostalgia, photos of us from happier times. Sentences like, "Remember when it was just us?" But they held no power anymore. I saw them for what they were, desperate attempts to rewrite a story whose ending he had written with his own hands. And I wasn't interested in reading it again. Instead, I filled my days with new routines. Morning walks through the park, feeling the chill in the air, and watching strangers smile without hidden intentions. Cooking dinner for my father and listening to old songs that once made me ache, but now felt like freedom. I wasn't healing out of spite, I was healing because I deserved to. There was a life waiting for me that didn't include betrayal. And every now and then, late at night, I'd glance at my phone and see his name light up the screen. A long message, another plea. I wouldn't even open them. I'd just watch the notification disappear with a swipe of my finger, like brushing away dust from a windowsill. No anger, no sadness, just the quiet satisfaction of closing a door that should have been shut long ago. One evening, just as the sun dipped below the horizon, my phone buzzed again. His name lit up the screen. One more time. This message was longer, more frantic. I could see the first words without even opening it. Please, just one more chance. I stared at it for a moment, not with bitterness, but with a strange, soft amusement. The same man who once thought he was untouchable was now reduced to digital begging. alone with his regrets. I didn't feel the need to reply. There was nothing left to say. He'd spent years writing this ending, and now he had to sit with it, without my forgiveness, without my attention. I smiled quietly to myself, not out of cruelty, but out of peace. I pressed and held the message, my thumb hovering over the delete option. And then I did it. Gone, as if it had never been written. I stood up, stretched, and walked outside into the cool night air. The stars seemed brighter than I remembered. I could hear the faint rustle of leaves, the sound of life continuing, fresh and undisturbed. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't carrying his weight anymore. I was lighter, stronger, unburdened. Every step forward felt like breathing in a new life, and so I left it all behind, the lies, the apologies, the what-ifs. None of it mattered anymore. The world was wide open in front of me, and I had no more chains around my heart. Just a quiet, steady strength and a future I could finally claim as my own.